My name is Virginia Louise Whitmore. I'm 82 years old. People in my small Missouri town know me as the woman with the hydrangea garden, the quiet laugh, and the good apple cobbler. But that's not all I am. I was also a wife for 59 years. A mother of 3. A woman who believed in loyalty, in sacrifice, in staying the course no matter how rough the storm. And last spring I watched my husband die. I sat by his hospital bed in St. Joseph's Medical Center, holding his hand, brushing back the wisps of his silver hair, whispering prayers in his ear, even though I wasn't sure who I was praying to anymore. Carl Whitmore, my Carl, was slipping. The nurses said he couldn't hear us anymore, that the morphine was strong enough to drown out the world. But just before he took his last breath, just before the monitor let out that long, flat line, Carl opened his eyes. Glassy, distant. He squeezed my hand one last time. And he whispered, "Maribelle." One word. Name. Not mine. Not anyone I knew. And then he was gone. No explanation. No final "I love you." No memories of our children. No last whisper of our life. Maribelle. Whoever she was. Whoever she still is. I sat there in that beige hospital room, surrounded by the humming of machines and the smell of antiseptic, feeling like I had just stepped out of my life and into someone else's nightmare. Because that one name shattered everything. The next morning I stood in the mirror of my bedroom, our bedroom, wearing the same cardigan I had worn at the hospital. Carl's favorite, or so I thought. My eyes were swollen. My skin looked paper thin. I stared at myself, and for the first time in my long life, I asked a question I never imagined asking after a man I'd buried. Who was I married to? I should have let it go. That's what everyone said. My daughter Linda told me he'd probably been hallucinating. Mom, he was on drugs. People say strange things when they're dying. My son Henry patted my back and said, "He loved you, Ma. Let that be the memory you keep." But the truth, it clawed at my ribs, kept me awake at night. Who was Maribelle? And why was she the last thing on my husband's lips? The funeral came quickly. A sweet spring day, birds chirping, daffodils in bloom. Carl's casket was dark walnut, just like he'd wanted. The pastor read Psalm 23. The grandchildren sobbed. Everyone talked about how loyal and loving he'd been. A devoted husband. Rock. I stood beside the grave, nodding, smiling at guests as they pressed tissues into my hand and told me I'd done good. But inside, I was a rotting cathedral of unanswered questions. I knew I wouldn't rest until I knew the truth. That night, after the last casserole dish was scraped clean and the house finally quieted, I went into Carl's study. No one had touched it yet. The room smelled like leather, pipe smoke, and the faint scent of sandalwood. I sat at his desk, pulled open drawers like I was unearthing some ancient ruin. Photos of the kids. A rusty letter opener. His father's pocket watch. Nothing unusual, until I opened the bottom drawer and found an envelope. No address. No stamp. Just a name written in Carl's handwriting. Maribelle. Froze. My hands trembled as I opened the flap. Inside was a stack of old letters, tied together with twine. And at the top of the first one, in elegant cursive ink, "My dearest Maribelle, I dreamed of you again last night." I couldn't breathe. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or light the whole house on fire. Instead, I closed the envelope, stared at the desk, and whispered the same word Carl had before he died. "Maribelle, who were you? And what did you mean to my husband?" The next morning I made 2 decisions. 1. I would read every single letter in that envelope. And 2. I would find Maribelle if she was still alive. Because I needed to know if I'd spent nearly 60 years loving a man who'd given his heart to someone else. And if so, what that made me. A wife. A fool. Or just the shadow of another woman's love. I waited until midnight. There's something about reading secrets that feels criminal if done in daylight. The house was dark except for the lamplight beside Carl's old recliner. I sat there with a blanket over my knees and the envelope on my lap, my fingers trembling like a schoolgirl holding a boy's note for the first time. But this wasn't a love note meant for me. It was a betrayal wrapped in a bough of neat twine and aged paper. I untied the stack slowly. Each letter was dated. The oldest from 1964. The most recent, just 5 years ago. He'd written to her for over 5 decades, while raising 3 children, while holding my hand at Sunday service, while kissing me goodnight in our bedroom under the same roof. My stomach turned, but I needed to know. So I opened the first letter. My dearest Maribelle. Today Virginia made blueberry pie again. She always forgets I prefer cherry. But I ate it with a smile, because I have no right to want more than what I've been given. However, you live in my mind as fresh as ever. I saw a woman with your walk at the grocery store. I followed her to aisle 4 before realizing it wasn't you. Smiled anyway. It was the closest I've come to you in years. I dropped the page. Felt sick. That was the year Henry was born. How could he write such things while I was nursing his child? Rocking him in my arms. I picked up the second letter. And then the third. And the fourth. They weren't replies. Just one-way notes, unsent. They told a story. A story I had never been part of. Carl had met Maribelle before he met me. She was a music teacher in Kansas City. They'd dated for nearly 2 years. But her father had forbidden the relationship. Carl was too ordinary. Not of the same stock, whatever that meant. She married a banker named Paul Royston in 1962. Carl met me that same year. We were engaged by spring. Married in fall. And I had always thought he'd loved me from the start. But the letters said otherwise. Maribelle. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd fought harder. Virginia is a good woman. She's steady. But she's not you. You are color. You are spark. She is warm bread. You are fire. I covered my mouth and sobbed. I didn't know which hurt more. His honesty or his comparison. I wasn't a woman anymore. I was a utility, placeholder, consolation prize. By sunrise I'd read them all. 57 letters. 57 pieces of my marriage chipped away. But I didn't burn them. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse his name. Instead I picked up the final letter. It was dated just 5 years ago. Maribelle. I saw your obituary today. I had always hoped, even foolishly, that I might see you again. Just once. Now even that hope is gone. Virginia asked me why I was quiet at dinner. How could I tell her I was mourning a woman she never met? So she was gone. Maribelle had died. But Carl had grieved her silently in our home, while I set the table, served him meatloaf, folded his socks. He'd never said a word. That silence hurt most of all. Later that morning, I took the letters and placed them in a shoebox under my bed. I didn't want the children to find them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I still hadn't told them what Carl said before he died. How could I? They believed he was the perfect father, the kind husband. I didn't want to ruin that. But something in me refused to stay still. Had questions. And I needed answers. Was Maribelle truly gone? Had Carl really never contacted her? Was there anyone else, friends, family, who knew what I didn't? I remembered a name I had seen in the letters. Over and over again. Carl often wrote. Saw Gail again. She always pretends not to know the truth. Or, Gail's hair is graying now. Time is cruel to all of us. Who was Gail? And how could I find her? I went to the attic and pulled out Carl's old address book. It smelled of dust and old cologne. The pages were brittle, the ink smudged. But there she was. Gail Prescott. 822 Willow Hollow Road. Only 2 towns over. Still alive. I didn't know. But I was going to find out. I stood in front of the mirror again. The same Virginia Louise Whitmore, but somehow not. I wore my green dress. Carl always said it brought out my eyes. I wasn't wearing it for him this time. I was wearing it for me. For strength. For truth. I slid the address into my purse, along with the last letter. Then I locked the house and drove toward the past. Because Carl might be gone. But his secrets were still breathing. And I was finally ready to meet them face to face. The road to Willow Hollow was lined with overgrown ditches, swaying cornstalks, and memories I hadn't asked for. I hadn't been this far outside Millstone in years. Back in the day, Carl used to drive these back roads when he needed space. A phrase I chalked up to stress, aging, the usual man things. I never questioned it. Never followed. Now I wondered if every turn he took was toward her. Toward Maribelle. Toward secrets. And as I pulled onto the gravel drive of 822 Willow Hollow Road, I knew. I wasn't chasing a name anymore. I was chasing a truth I had lived beside but never inside. The house was small, well-kept, white clapboard siding and green shutters. An American flag drooped slightly from the porch. There were wind chimes, bird feeders, a rocking chair with a quilt draped over it. Peaceful, too peaceful. I climbed the 3 wooden steps slowly, the last Carl's wife would ever take toward another woman's life. I knocked twice. No answer. Just when I thought maybe it was the wrong house, the screen door creaked and a woman appeared. Late 70s, maybe older. Gray hair in a braid. Thin, sharp nose. As like slate cold but curious. She wore a light blue housecoat and no shoes. She didn't smile. Just stared. "Can I help you?" I swallowed. "My name is Virginia Whitmore. I think you knew my husband. Carl Whitmore." Her face didn't change. But her eyes did. Just for a second. Like the blink of a lie. Then she nodded. I did. I clutched the strap of my purse tighter. "And you are Gail?" "Yes." "Breathe. I need to ask you something. About Maribelle." Her expression shifted again, this time softer. But she didn't step aside. Didn't invite me in. Instead, she glanced behind her like someone might be watching. Then said, "Come around back. People around here talk." We sat on an iron bench beneath a willow tree so old it looked like it might whisper if you leaned close enough. She offered no tea. No cookies. Just silence. I didn't need comfort. I needed answers. "How did you know Carl?" asked. Her lips twitched. Almost a smile. Almost a smirk. "I met him at the Montgomery County Fair in '61. He came with his church choir. I was there with my cousin. And Maribelle." Her fingers tightened on the bench. "She was my sister." I felt the earth tilt. Your sister. The woman who haunted my husband's dreams. The woman who stole his last breath. "I had no idea," I said, my voice trembling. "Why would you?" she replied. "He made sure to keep that part of his life separate. For your sake." I stared at her. Felt the insult buried inside the courtesy. "For my sake. Or for his?" She didn't answer. I pulled the final letter from my purse and handed it to her. She didn't flinch. Didn't pretend she hadn't seen it before. She just stared at it. Then whispered. "He never mailed any of them. But he left them with me." My heart froze. "What?" Gail nodded. "I told him not to. I told him it would destroy your life and hers. But he wrote them anyway. Left them with me years ago. Told me. If anything ever happened to him, I should decide what to do with them. Why didn't you burn them?" She looked me straight in the eyes. "Because I didn't hate you." The wind moved through the willow branches like breath. For a moment we just sat there. 2 women tied to the same man in different ways. "I didn't know about you until after their affair ended," she said finally. "Affair," I echoed. The word tasted like rust. "How long?" asked. Her lips pressed tight. 3 years. On and off. My stomach churned. "And I was pregnant with your second," she finished. "He said he couldn't leave you. That you were decent. Loyal." Decent. Loyal. I was boring is what he meant. Replaceable. "He was planning to leave me." asked. She shook her head. "He was always planning. Never acting. That's who Carl was. Torn between duty and desire." "And Maribelle?" I asked, barely able to say the name. "She waited," Gail said. "She really did. Until the day she didn't. She married Paul Royston. Attaboy. But she never loved Paul. My hands were shaking. I shared a bed with that man for 59 years, I said, trying not to cry. And I never knew. Not really. Gail's eyes softened. You weren't blind, Virginia. You were in love. There's a difference. I wanted to scream, to stand up and shout at the sky, to ask God why he let me waste so much time loving a man who had never really belonged to me. But I didn't. Because part of me still remembered Carl's kindness, his laughter, the nights he rubbed my feet after long days. Had it all been a lie? Or had he simply compartmentalized me, put me in a box labeled wife, and her in one labeled everything else? I stood slowly. I appreciate your honesty, I said. Truly. But I have to go. Gail nodded, then said something I'll never forget. He chose you in the end, Virginia. Turn. He whispered her name when he died. She didn't blink. Because she was his first heartbreak, not his final love. There's a difference. I didn't reply. Because I didn't know what I believed anymore. When I got home, I placed the box of letters in the fireplace. But I didn't light them. Not yet. Because I wasn't done reading between the lines. And part of me still hoped, somehow, that I'd find a letter in there with my name on it. Just one. Because after all this time, I still needed to believe I wasn't just the woman he settled for. After that afternoon with Gail, I returned home with a weight that felt even heavier than before. It's strange how learning the truth doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it just brings more questions, more ache, more rooms in your mind you didn't know existed, now filled with ghosts. I made myself tea that night, Earl Grey with a little honey, the way Carl used to fix it for me when my throat was sore. I poured 2 cups out of habit, then stared at the second cup until it went cold. He was gone, and I still didn't know if I ever really knew him. I needed more. Not from Gail. Not from the letters. I needed it from Carl. So I went back into his study. For the first time, I opened every drawer, pulled every book from the shelf, searched every pocket of his jacket still hanging in the closet. I didn't know what I was looking for. Just something real. Something with my name on it. And then I found it. Tucked behind a loose board in the bottom drawer of his desk. An envelope. No stamp. No writing. Just yellowed paper sealed tight with time. I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo. Black and white. A young woman with bright eyes, a wild smile, and wind-blown hair stood on a cliffside, arms spread wide like she was about to fly. It wasn't me. But it wasn't Maribelle either. I turned it over. In Carl's handwriting were the words, North Shore, 1963. Anna. Anna. Another name. Another woman. My heart pounded. Carl and I had spent our honeymoon on the North Shore. In 1963. The same year we were married. I stared at the photo again. The woman's face. Something about it was familiar. Then it hit me. The nose. The jawline. It was our daughter, Linda. But younger. Much younger than she'd ever been in any photo I'd taken. No, it wasn't Linda. It was someone who looked like her. Someone who shared blood with her. Anna, I whispered. Then I remembered something. Years ago, maybe 30, maybe more, Carl came home in the middle of the night. Said he had to take a drive. His eyes were red. He smelled like salt air and old grief. When I asked him what happened, he told me an old friend had passed. A war buddy. I believed him. Course I did. But now I wasn't so sure. I sat at the kitchen table and looked through every letter again. Searching for Anna. Nothing. Not once. She wasn't in the Maribelle stack. Which meant either she came before, or after. Or maybe she didn't come at all. Maybe she stayed. The next day, I called my oldest friend, Betsy Chandler. Betsy had lived next door to Carl's mother for 40 years. She knew more about that family than they knew about themselves. Betsy, I said after exchanging pleasantries, do you remember a girl named Anna? From the early 60s. Someone Carl knew. There was a pause, then a sigh. Oh, honey, she said. You never heard about Anna? My blood turned cold. No, I haven't. Oh, she said. I thought maybe he'd told you. Maybe it wasn't my place. Tell me what, Betsy. She lowered her voice like the truth might break the phone line. Anna was Carl's cousin. But not really. She lived with them for a while. Her mother died in childbirth, and Carl's family took her in. But she wasn't blood. Just kin by kindness. Why have I never heard of her? She disappeared, Virginia. Right before y'all got married. Ran off, some said. Others, well, there were rumors. I gripped the phone tighter. What kind of rumors? That she was pregnant. My breath caught. Betsy continued. Carl was the last person seen with her. They said he was trying to help her get on her feet. But then she vanished. Some say she went west. Others say. What? Others say she didn't go anywhere. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Pregnant. Disappeared. A girl who looked like my daughter. Like me. The math didn't add up. Or maybe it did too well. Was it possible? Had Carl fathered a child before we married? Or worse? Was Anna someone he tried to protect and failed? The only way to know was to find her. If she was still alive. And if she wasn't, then maybe someone knew where she ended up. And why her photo was hidden. Not burned, not buried, but saved. Like a secret regret. Or a love too painful to speak aloud. That night, I dreamed of the North Shore. Of waves crashing against cliffs. Of a girl standing with her arms outstretched. And Carl standing behind her. Hands full of letters never sent. When I woke up, the photo of Anna was still on the table. Waiting. Like a door that had never been opened. But was never locked. The photo of Anna haunted me. Every time I passed the kitchen table I paused. Looked at it again. Hoping her face would somehow reveal more than a moment frozen in time. But her eyes just stared into the wind. And I didn't know if they were calling for help or running from it. I couldn't rest until I found out who she really was. I didn't tell the children about any of it. They were still mourning their father in the ways they knew how. Dropping by with casseroles, retelling the same 3 funny stories at dinner, placing fresh flowers on his grave every Sunday. To them, Carl had died the way he lived. Kind, reliable, honorable. I didn't want to break that illusion. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I needed the truth for me. For the woman who sat at his side for nearly 60 years and never once suspected her life was only part of the story. The next day, I drove to the county records office. A musty, quiet building on the edge of town. The kind of place where secrets go to nap. The receptionist was a young man, maybe early 30s, with glasses too big for his face and an expression that said, "I don't get paid enough for this." I smiled politely. "Hi, I'm looking for birth records from the early 1960s. Specifically 1963. He blinked. "That's a long time ago." He nodded. "So am I." He chuckled softly and led me to a long wooden table with a bulky microfiche reader. After an hour of slow scrolling, I found what I was looking for. Anna Louise Hargrove. Born April 9, 1963. No father listed. Mother deceased. Elaine Hargrove, age 19, complications during childbirth. No other family noted. Foster placement. Carl and Edith Whitmore. By Carl. And his mother, who died just after Linda was born. Anna was placed in their care. But only for a short time. There was a note. Placement ended August 1963. No further records. Vanished. Like smoke. Like a name erased from a family tree with a trembling hand. That night I went to the attic again. Carl's old trunk was up there. The one he always kept locked. Said it had his father's war medals and some dusty books. I found the key in his tool chest. Inside the trunk, under layers of newspapers and yellowing receipts, was a small metal box. And in that box, another letter. This one addressed to be opened only if I'm gone. "Virginia, if you find this, I'm sorry." My breath caught. With shaking hands, I unfolded it. The ink was faded. But the message was clear. Dearest Ginny, if you're reading this, I'm no longer alive, and for that I'm grateful. Because I don't know how I could ever look you in the eyes and say this. Anna was my daughter. Not by blood but in every way that matters. Her mother, Elaine, was my first cousin. She was young, scared, and her parents had cast her out. She came to me for help. Took her in. I promised to protect her. But she died giving birth. I raised Anna in secret for 5 months. But I wasn't strong. I was scared. You and I were planning our wedding and I didn't know how to tell you. So I placed her in a private home, paid for anonymously. I visited her often. Until they moved and never told me where. I spent decades trying to find her. I wrote letters. Hired people. Nothing. I named her in my will. I left money for her just in case. She's the reason I was distant at times. She's the reason I never told you certain things. And Maribelle. Maribelle helped me. She kept the records, the receipts, the letters. She knew about Anna. She was my only friend who did. I never stopped loving you, Ginny. But I never stopped grieving the girl I lost either. Please forgive me. Carl. I sat there on the attic floor, the letter in one hand, the photograph in the other, and I wept. For Anna. For Elaine. For Carl. And for the woman I'd been. Faithful, devoted, blind. How do you forgive a man who kept something so big hidden? How do you forgive yourself for not knowing? The next morning I called a lawyer. If Carl had named Anna in his will, there had to be a record. I needed to know if she was still out there. I needed to know if, after all these years, there was still a piece of him walking around in the world. And if there was, she deserved to know the truth. Even if it broke her. Even if it broke me. I stood outside the law office of Donnelly, McBride, and Associates in downtown Millstone for nearly 10 minutes before walking in. The receptionist offered me a warm smile, but I barely returned it. I wasn't here to exchange pleasantries. I was here to open a door Carl had sealed shut decades ago. I gave my name and within minutes, a younger attorney, mid-40s, wiry with a nervous energy, greeted me and led me into his office. His name was Jared Donnelly. He was the son of Carl's original attorney. He shook my hand and said, "Mrs. Whitmore, I've been expecting you." Expecting me? He nodded. Your husband left specific instructions that if, after his death, you ever inquired about a certain section of his will, I was to disclose everything to you. I sat down stunned. So he planned for this. In a way, yes. Carl was meticulous. Jared pulled out a thick file from a locked drawer. Inside were documents, letters, financial statements. Most of them related to someone listed only as Beneficiary B. He placed a paper in front of me. She goes by the name Rose Hammond now. Legally changed it in 1983 after adoption. Born April 9, 1963. As Anna Louise Hargrove. Placed into private care. Adopted at age 6 by Richard and Claire Hammond of Atlanta, Georgia. No known siblings. No criminal history. Works as a florist. Divorced. One son. I stared at the name. Rose. Not Anna. Whole life. A whole person I never knew existed. Does she know who she really is? Jared hesitated. No. Your husband set up the trust anonymously. He funneled money into an account that was gifted to her on her 30th birthday. She never knew where it came from. Does she know Carl is dead? No. Does she know I exist? No, Mrs. Whitmore. She knows none of it. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again, staring at the photograph of Anna, Rose, and the letter Carl had left me. A quiet war raged inside my heart. Part of me was furious. How dare he hide something this big? Another part of me wept, for Carl, for his guilt, for the child he tried to protect and lost. But the part of me that was Virginia, the woman who raised a family, who baked pies every Sunday, who stood by her husband through storms and sunlight, that part knew what she had to do. I had to find Rose. I had to look her in the eye and tell her who she was. Not because Carl owed it to her. 'Cause I did. 2 weeks later, I boarded a train to Atlanta. I hadn't traveled alone in nearly 40 years. My children were bewildered, but I told them I was visiting an old friend from my college days. A harmless lie for a greater truth. Had an address. A quaint floral shop nestled on the corner of Monroe and Fifth. Roses blooms. I stood across the street, heart pounding. The shop was cheerful. Flower boxes spilling over with petunias and hydrangeas. The windows were hand-painted with vines and pastel lettering. It looked like a place untouched by sorrow. Through the glass I saw her. Rose. Mid-50s, auburn gray hair pulled into a ponytail, jeans and a green apron stained with pollen. She was arranging tulips, her hands moving gently, instinctively. And for a moment I felt like I was watching Carl in her gestures. In the way she tilted her head. In the way she smiled at a customer. There he was, reborn in a woman who didn't even know his name. I didn't go in. Not that day. I watched her from a cafe across the street for hours. Customers came and went. She laughed. Hugged an elderly man who brought her coffee. Teased a delivery boy. Gave a little girl a daisy for free. She was alive. She was loved. She was whole. Would telling her the truth shatter that? Would it help her? Or would it simply ease my guilt? That night in my hotel room, I opened my notebook and wrote a letter. I didn't know if I'd give it to her yet, but the words spilled out anyway. Dear Rose, my name is Virginia Whitmore. You don't know me, but I've known about you for nearly 2 months now. You were born Anna Louise Hargrove. Your mother was my husband's cousin. Your birth was difficult. She didn't survive. My husband Carl took you in briefly. He meant to raise you. But we were getting married and he was scared. He placed you with a family he trusted. He spent his life regretting that decision. He never stopped loving you. He left you part of his estate. But more than that, he left you his silence, and I'm so sorry for that. You deserved better. You deserved truth. I don't know if you'll ever forgive him. I don't know if you'll want to meet me. But if you do, I'll be here. Because family isn't always who raises you. Sometimes it's who seeks you out. Late, broken but honest. With love. Virginia. The next morning I returned to the flower shop. Rose was there as usual, sweeping the front steps. I walked slowly across the street. My hands trembled as I approached her. She looked up, smiled warmly. Good morning. Can I help you? He nodded. I believe you can, I said, offering her the envelope. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Not until I was sure she wanted to look forward. I returned home the next day. My heart was heavy, but lighter than it had been in weeks. There's a strange peace that comes with telling the truth, even when you don't know how it'll be received. I didn't expect to hear from her. Not right away. Maybe not ever. And I told myself that was okay. Rose had a full life. She had a business, customers who adored her, a son. Community. What right did I have to walk into it with a ghost of a past she never asked for? I told myself it was enough just to have written the letter. To have told her she mattered. But on the third day back in Millstone, a small white envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. It looked nothing like Carl's. It was hers. I sat down in the same kitchen chair where I'd read Carl's confession, my hands trembling. I opened the envelope slowly, deliberately. Inside was a single sheet of thick, cream-colored paper. And written in gentle, looping script were words I will never forget. Dear Virginia, I read your letter 3 times. Then I cried. Then I sat with my son and told him the truth I'd never known until yesterday. That I was born from heartbreak and silence. That the man who gave me up didn't abandon me, but mourned me. That I had a connection to someone I never knew, but who thought of me every day. And that you, the woman who shared his life, chose to find me. You didn't have to. You could have left it buried. But you didn't. And for that I'm grateful. I don't know yet what I want from this. But I do know I want to meet you. If you're willing. There are things I need to understand. And maybe things you need too. Let's meet this Sunday. At the park by the lake. Noon. Come alone. Rose. My hands pressed the letter to my chest, my heart beating so hard I thought it might tear through my ribs. She wanted to meet. She wanted to know. And somewhere inside me, inside all the heartbreak and betrayal and confusion, hope stirred. Hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could still come from the wreckage Carl left behind. Sunday came like a dream I didn't dare believe. I put on a soft blue cardigan, the one Carl used to say brought out my eyes, and my locket with our children's photos tucked inside. I didn't bring anything else. No letters. No pictures. Just myself. Just truth. The park by the lake was quiet. Breezy. A few joggers passed. A couple of children squealed as they fed ducks from the shore. Then I saw her, Rose, standing under the same old willow tree where Carl once proposed to me, back when the world was simpler. She looked nervous, but when she saw me she smiled. And I smiled back. We stood there a long moment, neither of us speaking. Then she took a step forward and said, "You look like someone I've always known." I laughed. "And you look like someone I should have." She nodded. Then we sat and talked. 4 hours. About nothing at first. Then about everything. She asked about Carl, what he was like as a father, a husband, a man. I told her the truth. Not just the best parts, but all of it. She told me about her childhood. Loving, simple, safe. Her parents had passed away a few years ago. Her mother, Claire, had left her a letter revealing she was adopted, but without any identifying details. She never pursued it. Life had been too full to look back. Till now. Till me. At one point, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small plastic box. Inside was a photograph. A woman holding a newborn. Both faces blurred by time, but something about the posture, gentle, proud, was unmistakably maternal. "I always wondered who she was," Rose said. "Now I wonder about both of them." I touched the edge of the photo gently. "That's your mother," I whispered. "And he, Carl, he tried to be enough. He really did." She nodded. "I think I believe that now." We sat in silence after that. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "Would you like to meet my son sometime?" The words took my breath. A new branch in the family tree. A name I didn't know yet, a life I'd never touched, but a chance to begin. Smiled. "I would like that very much." That evening, I returned home to a kitchen that felt a little less lonely. I poured a cup of tea and sat with Carl's letters one last time. Then I took them to the fireplace. Not out of anger, but because I no longer needed them. The truth had done its job. The silence had been broken. And in its place, new roots had begun to grow. It had been 2 weeks since I met Rose in the park, and I hadn't stopped thinking about her since. Her voice, her questions, her careful hope, all of it lingered in my mind like the scent of something warm baking in the next room. Familiar but not mine. Not yet. We'd kept in touch. Short phone calls, a few emails. And then an invitation. "Would you come to dinner?" she asked one morning over the phone. "Just you and me. And Evan, my son. He's curious. And nervous. But mostly curious." I said yes before I could second-guess myself. That Friday night, I found myself standing in front of a red brick bungalow just outside of Atlanta, holding a basket of homemade cinnamon rolls. Felt silly, but it was what I always brought to people I cared about. And somehow, I already cared about her. Rose opened the door with that same warm smile I'd seen in the flower shop. "You're early," she teased gently. "Just like my mother used to be." "She taught you well," I smiled, stepping inside. The home smelled like roses and wood polish. Pictures lined the walls. Photos of birthdays, graduations, lazy Sunday afternoons. I saw Evan in most of them. He looked like his mother, tall and gentle-eyed. But there was something about the set of his mouth, the angle of his chin, that made me freeze for half a second. Carl. Even now, even after everything, that resemblance hit me like a gust of cold wind. "Come on," Rose said, leading me toward the dining room. "Dinner's almost ready." The table was set simply. Blue dishes, cloth napkins, candles flickering softly. Evan entered a few minutes later, nervous but polite. "Hi, Mrs. Whitmore," he said, extending a hand. "Call me Virginia," I replied, shaking his. "Or Ginny if you like." He smiled. "Okay, Ginny." Dinner was roasted chicken, sweet potatoes, and a salad with fresh dill. We talked about everything but the thing we were all thinking. Evan told me about his job at a tech company. Some role I barely understood but nodded along with politely. Rose asked about my garden, about my favorite books, about the weather in Millstone. We danced around the truth like it was a centerpiece we were too afraid to move. Finally, after dessert, peach cobbler and ice cream, Evan leaned forward. "So, what was he like?" "Carl." The question felt like a stone dropped into still water. Took a breath. "He was quiet," I said. "And steady." He had a laugh that took effort, but once it came, it filled the whole room. He loved black coffee and crossword puzzles. And jazz, always jazz. He never learned to dance, but he'd sway a little in the kitchen when he thought no one was looking. Rose smiled. "That sounds like Evan." I looked at him. He was blushing. "He had guilt," I added quietly. Deep, quiet guilt. And I didn't understand it until now. He lived with a lot of ghosts. Evan looked down. "It's strange," he said, "to think about the past like this. Like it matters to who I am now." "It does," I said. "But not in the way you think. Doesn't define you. It just explains a few of the echoes." Later, as we sipped tea in the living room, Rose brought out a box. "I've kept this since I was a girl," she said. "It's filled with all the things I never understood. And now, maybe you can help." Inside were old birthday cards signed only, from a friend. Sketches of flowers. A single seashell with the initials CW carved on it. "I didn't know what it meant," she said. "I just knew someone out there cared." I touched the seashell gently. "Carl loved the beach," I whispered. "He used to say the sea holds the parts of ourselves we're too afraid to face." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "He was there," she said softly. "Somewhere." "He never stopped being there," I told her. When I left that night, the air was cool, and the moon hung low in the sky. Rose walked me to my car. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wasn't sure if this would be too much. Or too late." "It's never too late for truth," I said. We hugged. It wasn't awkward or stiff. Felt like something long overdue. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw her waving. And I realized something. Carl may have whispered another woman's name on his deathbed. But he didn't whisper it to hurt me. He whispered it because he had unfinished business. Because he trusted me, finally, to carry the rest of his story. To finish it in a way he couldn't. To find the daughter he lost. And maybe, in the process, find something for myself too. Secrets have a weight to them. For a time you can carry them. Quietly. Alone. And no one suspects the strain. But eventually, when enough truth has been unearthed, carrying that weight by yourself becomes a burden too great to bear. And the people who love you, they deserve to know why you've been walking differently. Why your silence lingers longer. Why your eyes seem to drift when they talk about their father. So I decided it was time to tell my children. I invited them all over for Sunday lunch, our tradition since they were teenagers. I told them it was important, that I had something to say. No one argued. No one ever really does when you're 79 and your voice trembles over the phone. The table was set just as it had been for decades. Linen napkins, roast chicken, my mother's ceramic gravy boat. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. They arrived one by one. Linda, the oldest, always first, always in control. Her husband, Barry, trailed behind her, arms full of store-bought pie. Mark, my middle child, came next, my thoughtful son. Divorced twice, still gentle with his words. He brought flowers as he always did. And then there was Beth, the baby. Fiery, skeptical, fiercely independent. She came alone, eyes scanning the room like a battlefield. We ate quietly. They chatted about work, the grandkids, traffic. I nodded, smiled, barely tasted a thing. Then I stood up and said, "I need to talk to you." They looked up, forks paused midair. I need to tell you something about your father. Silence. Linda frowned. Mom, if this is about the cemetery plot, we already. No, I interrupted gently. It's about someone he left behind. I reached into the sideboard drawer and pulled out a photo. It was of Rose, smiling in front of her flower shop. Innocent, unknowing. This is your half-sister, I said. 3 jaws dropped. I didn't flinch. What? Beth was the first to speak. Is this a joke? No. Linda stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Mom, what are you saying? I'm saying your father had another child. Before any of you were born. Her name is Rose. Mark remained quiet. Processing. Always slower to react, but deeper when he did. Beth stood up. Dad cheated on you. No, I said. It was before me. Before we married. But he raised her, briefly. Then he gave her up. And he never told anyone. Not even me. Linda's face tightened. So why now? Why are we hearing this now? Because I found her. After he died. Beth paced the room. You tracked her down. What, for closure? Yes, I said. And because she deserved the truth. Linda's voice cut through the room like cold glass. So what now? Are you bringing her to Thanksgiving? I let the silence settle. She's not asking for anything. No inheritance. No apologies. Just understanding. Mark finally spoke. Is she nice? I looked at him, grateful. She's kind. She reminds me of all of you in different ways. Linda folded her arms. I think this is a mistake. I think you're grieving and confused and looking for meaning in things that don't matter anymore. Beth narrowed her eyes. No. Think you're scared. Because if Dad lied to you about this, what else did he lie about? I felt the sting of that. He nodded. I don't know what else he kept from me. But I know that he loved all of you. And I know he loved her too. Just differently. Quietly. Regretfully. They left in silence. No hugs. No see you next week. Just coats pulled tight and car doors slammed a little too hard. Mark called the next morning. I've been thinking, he said. About Rose. I held my breath. I'd like to meet her. Tears welled in my eyes. You would. He chuckled softly. Yeah. I mean, if she wants to meet me. Us. She would, I whispered. He paused. Do you think the others will come around? I don't know, I said. I hope so. 2 weeks later, Rose came to Millstone. She was nervous. Hands fidgeting, voice soft. But Mark welcomed her. They walked the garden, talked for hours. He told her stories about Carl, their father. The real ones. Not just the perfect ones. She laughed. She cried. I watched from the porch, heart full. And then, one by one, the others began to soften. Beth sent an email, short but not cold. I've been thinking. Maybe we could talk. Linda mailed a card. No return address. Just a line. Maybe Dad had more depth than I gave him credit for. I'm sorry. By autumn, Rose was part of us. Not completely. Not seamlessly. But enough. Enough to be included in birthdays and emails and family group texts. Enough to matter. Enough to feel real. And I, Virginia Whitmore, who once held my dying husband's hand and wondered if I'd ever trust my own judgment again, stood in the middle of a growing, complicated, beautiful family. And finally felt like I had turned the page. 6 months had passed since Rose entered our lives. In that time we had shared dinners, holidays, quiet mornings with tea, and loud afternoons filled with grandchildren's laughter. My home, once echoing with loneliness, now pulsed with new energy. A different kind of love. A repaired, more honest kind. But one final thread still tugged at me. Photograph. A small, creased black and white photo I had discovered tucked behind Carl's high school yearbook weeks earlier. I hadn't shown it to anyone. Not even Rose. Not yet. It was a woman. Not Maribelle. Not Rose's birth mother. Someone else. She was young. Hair in soft curls. Face full of light. Her arm linked with Carl's. And on the back, in Carl's sharp, familiar script, was one word. Forgive. I carried that photo in my purse for weeks. I couldn't explain it. I just wasn't ready to know. Till now. It was Rose who brought up Maribelle again. We were sitting on my front porch, late April, the dogwoods in bloom. I've been thinking, she said, stirring her tea. You said my mother died giving birth to me. But I've been reading, and that name, Maribelle Hargrove. I can't find her in any records. No obituaries. No birth certificates. Nothing. Froze. I've looked in Georgia, South Carolina, even Virginia. Nothing. Do you think that wasn't her real name? Closed my eyes. Photo. The handwriting. Timing. Carl's voice echoed in my mind. Forgive. I don't think Maribelle ever existed, I said quietly. At least not the way Carl told it. Rose turned to me, brow furrowed. Then who was she? I stood and went inside. Returned with the photo. I think this was her, I whispered. Rose took the photo, studied it. Then she gasped. I've seen her before. That's the woman from the shell. The what? She ran to her purse, pulled out the tiny white shell with the initials CW Plus carved into it. She gave this to me when I was little, Rose said, her voice trembling. At the beach. She said it was from my father. I thought it was just a story. A nice stranger. My heart thudded in my chest. MS. I murmured. Maribelle. Wasn't Maribelle. Her real name was Margaret Sinclair. Rose sat back stunned. She lived? She asked. I think so, I said. I think Carl didn't tell us the whole truth. Maybe they separated. Maybe she couldn't raise you. Maybe she thought disappearing was the best thing. But why not tell me? Because maybe she asked him not to. Or maybe he thought he was protecting you. Or himself. We searched for Margaret Sinclair that week. It didn't take long. She lived in a quiet coastal town in North Carolina. She ran a small bookstore. Never married. No children on record. But there was a photo on her store website. Older now, grayer, softer. But unmistakably the woman from Carl's photo. The woman on the shell. The woman Rose remembered. She's alive, Rose whispered. And then, quietly but clearly, she said, I need to see her. I didn't go with her. That journey I felt belonged to Rose. I waited by the phone that day, nerves rattling like dry leaves in the wind. She called late that night. She remembered me, Rose said, her voice a mixture of awe and ache. She cried. Told me everything. I held my breath. They were in love. But her parents didn't approve. She was sent away when she got pregnant. Carl tried to bring her back into his life after I was born, but her family cut ties. And when he finally found her again, it was too late. She was ashamed, afraid. She told him to raise me and forget her. I blinked back tears. She said she's thought about me every day since. A week later, Margaret came to Millstone. She and I met in the garden behind the house. Two old women, once connected only by silence and grief. I always wondered who he married, she said. And now I know he chose well. We talked for hours. Not just about Carl. But about life. About age. About how the heart doesn't ever really stop dreaming, even when it's broken. Rose stood between us on the porch that evening, arms around both our shoulders. And for the first time in decades, I felt the story was complete. Not perfect, but whole. Carl's death didn't just end something. It began something. It unraveled a lie, yes. But it also unraveled courage. Gave me back my voice. It gave Rose her truth. Gave Margaret forgiveness. It gave our children a fuller picture of who their father really was. Not perfect but human. Not unfaithful but afraid. And it reminded me at 79 that there's no deadline on redemption. Or reconciliation. Or starting again. I still visit Carl's grave once a month. I bring flowers. Sometimes I bring a letter. I sit beside him and talk about the garden, about Rose's business growing, about Evan's new promotion, about Margaret's upcoming birthday. I tell him about the cinnamon rolls I made, and the picture Beth painted, and the book Mark lent me. I don't ask him why anymore. I just tell him what came after. Because that, I've learned, is what matters most. What you do after the pain. What you build from the ashes. What you choose, truth, love, peace, when silence no longer serves you. And that woman who once sat beside her dying husband, holding his hand as he whispered the name of someone she didn't know. She's not broken anymore. She's wiser, braver, and finally free. If this story brought you closure, peace, or tears, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe. Every story ends somewhere. But healing, love, and truth always continue.